It's summertime, and the garden is in full bloom. But it's not exactly what this family had in mind. Mother Nature has her own ideas about who moves into their backyard. Instead of a beautiful garden, it's a suburban jungle. Though our gardens may appear to be so tidy and so carefully controlled, looks can be deceiving. If you examine them more closely, you will find bugs, slugs, and snakes taking advantage of the free room and board we have planted for them. There might be a killer waiting in ambush, a war raging against an enemy, and a couple entwined in a long embrace. These are only a few of the dramas taking place right in your own backyard.
You may think that simply buying a property makes it yours. But there's really no such thing as a place of your own. It's easy to get the wrong impression, of course. This family has just bought a lovely home in the English countryside. And what could be more gracious, more civilized than an English garden? Well, don't be fooled. It's a jungle out there. Any garden is full of uninvited guests, only too eager to take advantage of your hospitality. As soon as you move in, you'll find that others are already quite at home. The fact is, no matter where your garden is, it's sure to provide a very comfortable existence for lots of wildlife, partly because we provide what they need in order to thrive. Put up as many fences as you like, you can't keep nature out. Something is chipping away at the garden woodwork. It's a queen wasp, busy with the process of gathering wood to build her nest. Having scraped up a supply with her jaws, she carries it back to her chosen nest site, maybe in a tree or a hole in the ground. Wasps are very adaptable. One may well have taken up residence in your shed. She started this dainty nest by herself, and soon she'll retire inside to rear huge numbers of industrious workers. But in the meantime, she has to struggle on with the construction work single-handed, using a simple mixture of wood and saliva to build with astonishing precision. She begins with a structure so small, you probably wouldn't even notice it. Give an animal or a plant the chance, and it'll take every advantage of you. And most of the life you find in your garden is there because of its adaptability. Your home is their home, and they'll make full use of the facilities. While you're busy caring for your family, others are doing the same. Like all good mothers, a leaf-cutter bee gives her babies the best start she can. First, she laboriously excavates a suitable nesting hole. But she needs something to use as a lining, and that's when she turns her attention to your roses. She carries on, painstakingly cutting pieces of leaf and ferrying them back to her nest hole. Then she pulls them into place to form the walls of a little tube-shaped cell. Each piece is meticulously tailored to the correct size and shape. Ovals for the side walls and round ones for the ends. She's making a row of chambers in which she will lay her eggs. And as she finishes each one, she gathers a store of pollen and nectar, which will serve as a food supply for her growing children. After all this careful preparation, she lays her eggs. Then the last chamber is sealed up, and that's that, as far as she's concerned. She'll never see her offspring again. So if you find neat holes cut in your rose leaves, it's probably a leaf-cutter bee that's responsible. Don't think for one moment that the natural spectacles in your backyard are there simply for your enjoyment. Every bird that sings, every flower that opens, is actually doing so for its own ends. And most of it, quite frankly, is to do with sex. No matter how well ordered your garden may be, the processes of nature will carry on. Finding a partner and raising the next generation is the priority. Down in the leaves, a male nursery web spider is keen on attracting a female. And the best way to do that is to offer her a carefully wrapped gift. The female is nearby, and the male gets excited, waving his present at her and trying to get close. But she's playing hard to get. He tries again. If only he can get her to take it, he can nip in and mate while she's busy devouring the package. He's wrapped it elegantly in white silk, the better to catch her eye. It's a useful ploy. A square meal like this would provide her with nourishment for raising healthy young. He creeps closer and closer and slides underneath. Things are looking hopeful. He waggles the present with increasing ardor. But the path of true love never does run smooth. As the sun goes down, the social life in the garden goes into full swing. The hedgehogs are courting. They may start with a chase across the lawn, the female attempting to flee, the male in hot pursuit. The squeaks and squeals can go on for hours. The courtship of garden snails is an even lengthier process and conducted at a much slower pace. It's surprisingly tactile. They touch each other with shameless abandon, their tentacles meeting in a tender embrace. When the hedgehog male finally catches his mate, she must adopt a particular position with her spines held flat, so as not to injure the softer parts of her suitor. Hedgehogs are actually quite promiscuous. They may even find another partner on the same night. Meanwhile, the snails have fired little chalky darts into each other as a prelude to mating, a sign that each means business. They may remain together like this for several hours. Each snail has both male and female reproductive systems in its body, so both now could potentially lay eggs.
Oh, that's very clever. Well played, Papa.
As a result of all this reproductive activity, you may find your garden becoming a maternity ward, without so much as a please or thank you. It's a race to raise as many offspring as possible before the food runs out. And birds such as chaffinches, whose natural home is woodland, have adapted well to a domestic habitat. A robin, too, will find a garden just as acceptable as the woods. And a hanging basket is a perfectly suitable place to raise chicks. The commandeering of our gardens as a natural nursery has all sorts of complications. We might not be too pleased when cabbage white caterpillars strip our cabbages and nasturtiums, but the butterfly chooses to lay her eggs on these plants for a very specific reason. She senses that the leaves contain mustard oil and picks out the ones with the strongest concentration. Once laid, the eggs are on their own. But as the caterpillars grow and feed on the leaves, they take doses of this unpleasant mustard oil into their bodies, enough apparently to deter some predators from eating them. Nevertheless, life will get very dangerous before they are fully grown. These little scenes of family life are being played out all over your garden, possibly right above your head. It's a parent bug, and she is a peerless mother. Hen-like, she sits astride her eggs on the leaves of a birch tree, not budging while the young hatch beneath her. The little bugs cluster together under her body for sustenance and protection. danger threatens. Ants would steal all her babies, given a chance. She uses threatening movements and gives off a nasty smell to drive them off. She's not going to give up without a fight. The ants return for another try, but she's determined. Even a squirt of formic acid in the face won't scare her off. The babies grow and shed their skins, and still she stands unflaggingly by. The young dispose of their molted skins. Left hanging around, they might draw the attention of predators. Once they're big enough to move farther afield, she leads them around on the search for edible birch seeds. They travel along the twigs in convoy, following her scented trail and keeping in touch with their antennae. But they will soon be able to manage without her. She'll leave them long before they're fully grown. But for an insect, the early care she has given them is remarkable. Genteel and civilized as it may seem on the surface, a garden is the scene of a continuing power struggle. The garden we want is not always the one we get. We tend to like showy flowers with exotic shapes and colors, in uniform sizes and neat rows, and we strive endlessly for size and perfection. We do like to have things tidy. This is completely unnatural, because plants, like everything else, must battle to survive and get ahead. Weeds are constantly finding their way into the most regulated flower beds, and are quite astonishing in their vigor. It's a war that will rage all summer, and weeds have devious means of spreading themselves around. The weed's main ambition is to get as much light and space as it can, and it doesn't care who it has to climb over to get it. Of all the garden invaders, bindweed must be one of the most aggressive. Pull it out if you like, but its spreading network of underground roots and stems will simply sprout again. Its beautiful flowers conceal a smotherer of murderous proportions. It's a gardener's nightmare. The best place for less persistent weeds is in a well-made compost heap, where all the nutrients they have accumulated during their renegade lives can be reclaimed. A compost heap generates a lot of heat as the vegetation breaks down. And down in the warmth and dampness is a perfect nursery for snakes. If yours were an English garden, you could host Britain's largest, the grass snake. A female grass snake will quite happily choose a large garden heap as the place to lay her eggs, and there can be as many as 40 in a clutch. She doesn't stay with them for long, but when she leaves them, they will be incubated in the warmth and safety of the heap until they hatch. As long as this man-made incubator is provided and there's a pond nearby for it to feed, a grass snake will do just as well in a garden as in a natural habitat, which is fortunate since many of its wild haunts have vanished. But a snake in a garden, Eden or not, can cause a panic.
Ah! Oh!
Grass snakes are quite harmless, and if you have one in your garden, you should feel extremely honored. They don't really like people very much and will make every effort to keep out of the way. Overhead in the branches, things are beginning to heat up wasp-wise. In the various nests, the workers have now emerged in some numbers and are continuing the hard work started by their queens, who have now retired inside to lay more eggs. The building carries on, and the workers share the endless task of feeding and tending the growing larvae. Some brisk wing fanning helps keep the nest at a comfortable temperature. Adult wasps feed on nectar, but the larvae back at the nest are hungry for meat. And luck runs out for the cabbage-white caterpillars. On a good day, several thousand pieces of prey may be taken back to a big nest. It's a ruthlessly efficient operation. Some may escape, but for others, it's a swift end. The creatures that we know the best are the ones which have learned to exploit us, living where we live and eating what we eat. Foxes, being fabulous opportunists, are very quick on the uptake. Plenty of food and suitable places for den sites are easy to come by in gardens, and they will take full advantage of this. So much so that half of a suburban fox's diet may consist of human handouts. They'll eat practically anything. There may be all sorts of signs that foxes are using your garden. They tend to dig holes to hide spare food, and because of their inquisitive natures, your things might get mysteriously moved around. But although they become confident through a long association with humans, they may not always be very visible. Some creatures are so drawn to our neighborhoods that they'd be hard-pressed to manage without us. House sparrows come originally from the plains of Africa, but here in this English garden, they don't seem the slightest bit homesick. And starlings find a very comfortable living too. They'll eat most things, and are always eager for handouts to feed themselves and their young. Many animals visit our garden simply looking for a free meal, and to a certain extent, this suits us just fine. But when it comes to the food we grow for ourselves, our tolerance is tested. There is something quite compulsive about growing your own food. A thriving vegetable patch is a very satisfying thing. The idea that we might grow beds full of delicious, crispy produce is what makes us rush out every spring to buy packets of seeds. What we're doing is taking advantage of the fact that plants are very efficient manufacturers of nutritious food. We can hardly blame other animals when they start taking advantage of it too. If a garden is deluxe accommodation, the food is little short of a banquet. Plant a garden, and it's like opening a free restaurant with an extensive menu. You might as well throw a party. After hours, there's a whole array of animals only too eager to drop in for a snack. Wood mice use up large amounts of energy and need to eat a great deal. Your vegetable patch is an open invitation. They've a liking for soft fruit and find large seeds attractive too. So if you wonder where your peas go, this is probably the culprit. Young, cultivated plants tend to be more attractive than wild plants, being softer and more nutritious. And anything recently planted is a sitting target. You might get the feeling that nothing is on your side. However, there is a balance to be found in the natural history of a garden, and where there are pests, you'll also find allies. A hedgehog consumes a large number of slugs and snails, and when she has her young in tow, they can really clean up. Hedgehogs like variety, but some things aren't that easy to get at. Carnivorous ground beetles roam the nighttime garden, and they are voracious hunters. They can track down a slug by following its slime trail, and once they've found it, there's no escape. Not all slugs are guilty of eating your plants, but the beetle makes no distinction. They're all potential meals. Your garden party is sure to attract extra guests. An elephant hawk moth drops in for a drink. It favors the nectar of honeysuckle, reaching deep into the flower with its very long tongue. A cockchafer beetle is the next to arrive. It's a male. He's been distracted by all the lights. What he's really looking for at your party is a mate. His antennae are tuned for the scent of a female. It's tempting to think that any hedgehog you see is devoted to controlling pests in your garden, but it probably covers as much as 2 miles a night, returning to its nest by dawn. The wood mouse makes a last evening sortie. It, too, never ventures out in daylight. But though the sun comes up and the guests have gone home, the party carries on. Ants feast on the party leftovers. They have a marked fondness for sweet things, and as they're social animals, there will soon be hordes of them gathered at one sitting. Ants track down sources of sugar in some surprising places. They even get it from the aphids that infest your plants. Aphids take in a lot of sap as they feed, but expel a good deal as sugary waste, and the ants just lap it up. They may even tickle the aphids to encourage this delicious honeydew to flow. Aphids are not exactly popular in the garden, and we spend a lot of effort trying to get rid of them. But if you spray them, you could be knocking out the natural defense force, which could clean up for you. A lacewing larva on the prowl. A hoverfly larva. A ladybird larva on the attack. All these strange juveniles are fierce predators of aphids and will suck them dry. This may be the only time you feel sorry for a garden pest. And things aren't getting any easier for the cabbage white caterpillars either. One crawls off, ready to start its transformation into a butterfly. But waiting in the wings is a tiny parasitic wasp, looking for somewhere fleshy to lay her eggs. She's watching for the moment when it will finally split its skin and emerge as a chrysalis, because that is when she'll make her move. She crawls over the still soft chrysalis and gives it a final examination. Then, before its skin has a chance to harden, she sticks in her egg tube and pumps it full of eggs. The young wasps will hatch inside the chrysalis and eat the contents, so that instead of a cabbage-white butterfly bursting forth, out will come a multitude of wasps, ready to find more caterpillars to infest. All sorts of life and death struggles go quietly unheeded in your garden. Even the innocent-looking flower border is full of danger for the unwary. A crab spider hunts by stealth. It tries again, camouflaged by the colors of the flower. Not one to give up, it tries once more, and gets a nasty surprise. A more sinister opponent skulks around a buddlier flower. A bush cricket, about to make its move. And for the crab spider, persistence finally pays off. The garden is not the calm and peaceful haven we might think it is. It is nature in the roar. A great diving beetle. Its streamlined body and strong hairy legs make it a powerful swimmer. It is also a ferocious predator with a particular taste for tadpoles. This one has a lucky escape. But not for long. From the dark depths of the pond, a strange creature begins to ascend and attracts the attention of water bugs patrolling the surface for prey. It's a damselfly nymph, and after several years underwater, it must now escape. Emerging to safety, it prepares for a great transformation. Slowly it struggles free of its old self, molting into an adult, leaving only an empty shell behind. Brand new wings extend as they fill with blood. And it's not just the body that has been transformed. Everything about the damselfly's life will undergo a drastic change. It will hunt from the air, and more importantly, it will be able to mate. The new adult pumps blood to its expanding body before it hardens into its final shape. It's ready at last for everything but a casual catastrophe. And the water bug has been waiting all this time. Unaware of the battles going on all around, we carry on the business of keeping a garden respectable. Now, grass is different from most plants. Its growing parts are down at the base. Chopping off the top does them no harm at all, which is why it's a never-ending task. And daisies, the scourge of the manicured garden, thrive in a mowed lawn. Being low-growing plants, they can't live in long grass, so the more you clip, the better they like it. It's a shame we're sometimes snobby about the sort of flowers we want in our gardens. We may dream of the summers of our romantic youth when meadows were flowery and there were cornfields full of poppies. But sad to say, these wild plants are much rarer now than they were in the old days. Even a little flush of native plants will help preserve a fragment of a vanishing habitat. Insects, of course, aren't fussy whether a flower is native or not, as long as there is pollen or nectar to be had. And most gardens have a long enough flowering season to attract a stream of visitors. Wasps take a late feast of nectar, but their nests won't survive the winter and they'll soon be dead. After weeks of ceaseless work as the colony grew, their chores are nearly over, and a picnic jam sandwich is really just the final fling. In the last of the long, warm days, a profusion of ants emerge from under the stonework. There are thousands of them, And in preparation for the social event of the season, they have put on wings. It's the start of the nuptial flights of the new queens and their consorts. Many colonies synchronize this event, their timing tuned to just the right weather conditions. The queens are larger and will shed their wings soon after mating. Then they'll retreat underground to start new nests. It's a frenzy of activity that lasts for days, as long as the weather holds. Summer is always over too soon. We always think it will go on forever, but of course it never does. An end of summer storm is an early warning of autumn. And in the compost heap, something is at last beginning to stir. From their tiny eggs, alien-like, the young grass snakes emerge. As they leave the heap, one of the first things they will have to do is to find a place to hibernate. Dwarfed by a tennis ball, one makes its way across the lawn. Summer is coming to an end. There's still some activity in the autumn garden. For a few of the visitors, there's a sudden flush of food. It may well be their last. And for the wasps, it's the end of the line. The queens will go into hibernation. The workers will become food for scavengers. The garden becomes a slightly mournful place. Squirrels take advantage of the glut of autumn seeds that the garden provides, hiding them away for leaner times ahead. They might well help themselves to your newly planted bulbs while they're at it. But for most wildlife, the high times are over. The days get short, the nights get cold. Only the toughest will survive. And it's not particularly easy for them. The garden that you have treated as an extension of the house for so long is shut out in the cold. Unable to bear the loss of all that greenery, we bring trees and bushes into our homes, covered with nice plastic decorations, instead of crawling things. It might look as if everything is back under your control, but don't you believe it. A queen wasp, sleeping out the winter in a cool closet. Tortoiseshell butterflies, quietly hibernating in your garden boots. In fact, there may be little surprises all over the house. We share our homes and gardens with so many things because we provide the conditions they like. And we can't be choosy about what moves in. But bear in mind that for many creatures, your garden is a valuable refuge. Encourage them to stay, and your garden will bloom with fascinating lives. Next year.